Welcome to Super Showdowns, the ultimate destination for epic battles and legendary showdowns. Join us as we put iconic superheroes, villains, and mythological figures against each other in thrilling matches of strength, strategy, and skill. The universe trembled under the weight of an approaching storm, one that threatened to obliterate any semblance of balance. At its epicenter were two forces so destructive that their mere existence spelled doom for any who dared stand in their path. On one side, the unstoppable engine of destruction, Doomsday. On the other, the godlike tyrant Darkseid. But how did these two colossal forces come to clash? The story began on a war-torn world light years away from Earth. It started with Doomsday, an abomination born from Kryptonian genetic experimentation. His creation was not to give life, but to perfect death. Every cell in his body held a singular purpose: survival through annihilation. Having slaughtered his way across countless star systems, Doomsday's latest rampage had brought him to Apokolips, the dark and desolate throne world of Darkseid. Here, the entity known as the God of Tyranny ruled with an iron fist, his hunger for dominion unyielding. But even Apokolips, a world forged in the fires of torment and despair, had never faced a threat quite like Doomsday. Darkseid's attention was drawn when reports from his parademon scouts detailed utter devastation in the planet's outer sectors. Entire legions had been reduced to ash, their weapons shattered, their mighty war machines turned to rubble. The abomination moved with terrifying purpose, cutting a swath of carnage as if to challenge the very heart of Apokolips. Seated upon his massive obsidian throne, Darkseid listened to these reports with a cold, impassive stare. Though his followers quaked with fear, he remained unshaken. To the ruler of Apokolips, Doomsday was just another foolhardy creature whose existence needed to be extinguished. Yet in the recesses of his mind, a flicker of curiosity stirred. Doomsday's ability to evolve, to adapt, was unlike anything he had encountered. Perhaps this Doomsday could be more than a threat. Perhaps he could be a tool. As Doomsday marched closer to the Apokoliptian citadel, Darkseid summoned Darkseid, his trusted servant. "Prepare the conquest array," Darkseid commanded. "If this creature seeks destruction, let him taste the full might of Apokolips." Darkseid bowed deeply, though his face betrayed unease. "My lord, this creature's power is unlike anything we have encountered before. The conquest array may not be enough."
Hey you! Don't just watch. Subscribe, please.
Darkseid's eyes flared with crimson light. "Then we shall discover its limits, and if it survives, I shall bend it to my will." Meanwhile, Doomsday reached the fire pits, the molten veins that powered Apokolips. Legions of parademons launched a coordinated assault. Waves of energy blasts lit up the ashen skies, and massive war engines belched streams of plasma. But it was all for naught. Doomsday tore through them with ease, his spiked fists rending metal and flesh alike. The infernal heat of the fire pits only fueled his relentless advance. The spectacle caught the attention of Kalibak, Darkseid's brutish son. Eager to prove his worth, Kalibak descended upon the battlefield, wielding his beta club. "Face me, beast!" he roared, charging headlong into battle. The clash between Kalibak and Doomsday was brief but catastrophic. Though Kalibak struck with all his might, his attacks barely fazed the creature. In moments, Doomsday overpowered him, leaving Darkseid's son broken and humiliated. Darkseid observed the battle from the citadel's highest tower. Though Kalibak's defeat was an embarrassment, it confirmed what he had suspected. Doomsday was no ordinary foe. Darkseid descended to the battlefield himself, his massive form cloaked in shadow, his Omega effect burning like twin stars in his eyes. As Darkseid approached, the very ground seemed to quake under his presence. Doomsday turned, his blood-red eyes locking onto the tyrant. For the first time, the unstoppable force had encountered an immovable object. The air grew heavy, the silence between them deafening. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Darkseid spoke first, his voice a deep, resonant growl. "Creature, you dare to defile my world. Tell me, do you have a purpose, or is your destruction as mindless as it appears?" Doomsday did not reply, for he could not. Words were beyond him. His response was action, a deafening roar and a charge that shook the ground beneath them. Darkseid raised a hand, unleashing a blast of Omega beams. The searing energy struck Doomsday squarely in the chest, driving him back, but failing to bring him down. The creature snarled, his body already adapting to the attack. He charged again, his spiked fists swinging with bone-shattering force. The clash that followed was nothing short of apocalyptic. Every blow exchanged sent shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. The skies above Apokolips burned as the fire pits roared to life. Darkseid fought with calculated precision, each move a testament to his millennia of combat experience. Doomsday, by contrast, was raw, unrelenting fury, a whirlwind of destruction that could not be tamed. Their conflict set the stage for a cosmic battle, one that would echo through eternity. The battlefield of Apokolips burned with an intensity that rivaled the fire pits themselves. The clash of titans, Doomsday, the unstoppable beast, and Darkseid, the tyrannical god, had already turned vast swathes of the planet into smoldering ruins. Each blow they exchanged reverberated through the very fabric of the planet, a violent symphony of destruction that echoed across the cosmos. Doomsday's relentless assault showed no signs of abating. His every step shattered the ground, his spiked fists carving through the air like blades of death. Darkseid, however, stood his ground, his hulking frame unyielding. His Omega beams scorched Doomsday's flesh, but the creature's ability to adapt rendered even those devastating attacks less effective with each passing moment. The god of Apokolips had never faced an enemy so resistant, so inexorably determined to destroy. As the battle raged, Darkseid began to assess his foe with a strategist's mind. Doomsday was not a warrior, but a force of nature, a living embodiment of destruction without purpose or restraint. Darkseid, in contrast, wielded both power and intellect. And it was intellect that would secure his victory. With a sudden burst of speed that belied his massive frame, Darkseid sidestepped Doomsday's next charge. The abomination's momentum carried him forward, and Darkseid seized the opportunity to strike. With a single, earth-shattering punch, Darkseid drove his fist into Doomsday's side, sending the creature hurtling into a nearby canyon. The impact created a chasm that glowed with the molten heat of the planet's core. Darkseid raised a hand, and the sky above Apokolips darkened. Bolts of crimson energy gathered at his fingertips, coalescing into a massive sphere of pure destructive power. This was no ordinary attack. This was the Omega Sanction, an ultimate manifestation of his godlike might. He hurled the sphere into the chasm, where it detonated with a blinding explosion that swallowed the entire canyon. For a moment, there was silence. The battlefield lay still, the flames of the fire pits momentarily dimmed by the sheer magnitude of the blast. But the silence was short-lived. From the depths of the chasm, a guttural roar erupted, shaking the very ground. Doomsday emerged, his body scorched but unbroken, his glowing red eyes fixed on Darkseid with unrelenting fury. "You continue to rise," Darkseid said, his voice a deep, resonant growl. "But even you have limits, creature, and I will find them." Doomsday charged again, his speed seemingly greater than before, his fists swinging with devastating force. Darkseid met the attack head-on, their clash creating a shockwave that flattened the surrounding landscape. Blow after blow was exchanged, each one threatening to tear the planet asunder. But Darkseid had begun to notice something. Doomsday's movements, while powerful, were becoming less precise, his attacks more erratic. Darkseid's eyes flared with the crimson light of the Omega effect. He unleashed a focused blast directly at Doomsday's chest. The creature stumbled, but continued his assault. Another blast followed, then another, each one more concentrated and precise. With each hit, Doomsday's movement slowed, his roars of rage turning into guttural snarls. Realizing that sheer force alone would not end this battle, Darkseid decided to change his approach. With a gesture, he activated the massive energy siphons that dotted the landscape of Apokolips. These devices, built to harvest the energy of entire star systems, began to draw power from the surrounding area. The atmosphere itself seemed to vibrate as the energy converged on Darkseid, who absorbed it into his being. Now infused with an unprecedented surge of power, Darkseid turned his full attention to Doomsday. His voice boomed across the battlefield, a declaration of his dominion. You are a creature of chaos, born to destroy, but I am the end of all things. I am order, I am inevitability, and you will kneel before me. Doomsday roared in defiance and lunged forward, his claws outstretched. But this time, Darkseid was ready. Channeling the vast energy he had absorbed, Darkseid unleashed a devastating blast of Omega energy, not in the form of his signature beams, but as a massive wave that engulfed Doomsday entirely. The wave struck with unparalleled force, disintegrating the ground beneath Doomsday and reducing the surrounding landscape to ash. The creature howled in agony as the energy tore through his body, bypassing his adaptive defenses and attacking his very essence. For the first time, Doomsday's regenerative abilities faltered. His form began to crumble, his roars growing weaker with each passing moment. As the energy dissipated, Darkseid approached the fallen abomination. Doomsday lay motionless, his once indomitable form reduced to a smoldering husk. Yet Darkseid's expression remained cold, his victory tempered by the knowledge of what this battle had cost Apokolips. He raised his hand one final time, his Omega beams igniting once more. With a single, decisive blast, he ended Doomsday's rampage. The battlefield grew quiet, the fires of Apokolips slowly rekindling as the world began to recover. Darkseid stood amidst the ruins, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Though he had emerged victorious, he knew that this was but one battle in an unending war. The universe was vast, and threats like Doomsday would always arise. But Darkseid was eternal, a god whose reign could not be challenged. As he returned to his citadel, his voice echoed across the desolate landscape. Let this be a lesson to all who defy me. Chaos may rage, but order will always prevail. I am Darkseid, and I am eternal.